Hello, my name is Joey, and this is my first entry in what I hope will be a series of movie reviews. I love movies, and I love talking about movies, and that's most of the information you really need to know about me. So, so let's get on to why you're here. So I realize the video quality may not be up to standard. I'm hoping if this is a thing that I am going to continue to be doing, I would like to look into getting a better webcam if that's the sort of thing that would help these reviews. I will surely look into that. So, as to these reviews, I'm planning to do them in a sort of structured way. I'm going to start with a basic overview of the movie, tell you the plot, who's directed it, who's in it, etc. Then I will give my broad opinion of the movie and determine whether or not I think you should see it based on what type of moviegoer you might be. So that's going to be the first part. Then the next part of the video, it'll be a more detailed discussion of the movie. So this will obviously be a section. Sorry, this will obviously be a section that contains spoilers, so I would recommend seeing the movie before continuing on to the discussion. But to each their own. If you prefer knowing ahead of time exactly what sort of movie you're going to be seeing and you don't care about spoilers, by all means, check out the rest of the video and decide whether you want to spend your money to see the movie. With that being said, let's talk Midsommar. So, Midsommar is a movie that released earlier this month, and I can't stop thinking about it. I knew if I was going to start a review channel, I would want to start with a movie I love and could talk about for hours, so here you go. Midsommar is distributed through A24, which, let me pause right here. My friends, if you're looking for high-caliber visionary films by directors with a unique perspective, or if you're just looking for a movie that is unlike anything you've seen before, watch out for movies distributed by A24. They have made some of the best films in the last several years that I've ever seen. Room with Brie Larson, The Witch, which is honestly the creepiest movie I've ever seen, Eighth Grade, which was one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, many others. When you go to the movies and watch the trailers, I recommend you start paying attention to what studios are distributing the films and whether or not A24 is behind them. They are completely original films and a welcome sight in the modern film industry. So last year, A24 distributed the debut film of a young writer-director named Ari Aster. It's a crazy and haunting movie called Hereditary. Midsommar is Ari Aster's second feature film. Hereditary, deserves its own review for another day, but let me impart some advice before you go see either one of Ari Aster's films. They are heavily marketed as horror movies, but they are vastly different from the Conjuring and Insidious type horror movies you might be familiar with. They are slow and somewhat challenging dramas that are set against the backdrop of horrific elements. So these are not thrill-a-minute, edge-of-your-seat horror movies with jump scares, so be warned if that's what you're wanting out of these movies. I went into Hereditary last year, and I was honestly expecting that type of horror movie, and I will admit I was majorly disappointed when it wasn't what I expected, and I hated the movie for it. However, a certain film critic that I had been following for quite a while, he was so passionate about this movie that I just had to see it again to make a new impression. It worked. And I strongly advise you that if you're having difficulties understanding why a certain movie is so critically acclaimed, try seeing it again now that you aren't expecting the movie to be something that it isn't. Because Hereditary is now one of my favorite films, and so I went into Midsommar with the expectation that I might have to watch it again to better appreciate it. So, Midsommar is marketed as a horror movie, but Ari Aster himself described it more as a breakup movie with elements of horror or an adult fairy tale. That's how I would describe it as well. So, the main point of Midsommar is not to scare, but to haunt and linger with you. It's about a young woman's trip to Sweden with her boyfriend and her friends. The wrinkle is that the young woman, Danny, has just suffered a horribly traumatic loss in her family. Because of this, she has become overly dependent on her boyfriend, Christian, to support her and hold her and to just be there for her during this time. So Christian and his friends were planning to go to Sweden themselves, but Christian guiltily invites Danny along, much to the frustration of one or more of his friends. The purpose of the Sweden trip is Christian's friend Josh's desire to attend an authentic midsummer festival as research for his college thesis. Their mutual friend Pele invited the two of them and their other friend Mark to his home in Hälsingland, a small community called Horga, where a midsummer festival, the likes of which occurs once every 90 years, is about to take place. So they all go to Sweden, and everything starts out fairly normal. The four outsiders have to take a little time to become familiar with the unusual customs, but that's to be expected. As the film progresses, however, you start to see that the customs of this community are more than a little unusual. They become weird, disturbing, and eventually horrifying. And trust me, this movie gets weird, and you have to be prepared for that. So the film has an R rating, and it's a hard R. So much so that it nearly received an NC-17 rating for its graphic content. And that should give you an idea of whether or not you would be comfortable seeing this with your significant other or your parents. There is blood, there is gore, but if you've seen the entirety of The Walking Dead or something like that, you shouldn't be too averse to it, but it does get pretty nasty. There is graphic nudity, full frontal on both sexes, and that leads into a fairly realistic sex scene, so heavy caution there. Add in some sequences of drug use and profanity, and there's your R rating. The acting is amazing, though. Danny is played by Florence Pugh, who is an up-and-coming actor I think people should look out for. She played the lead in Fighting with My Family, and she will perform next to Scarlett Johansson in the upcoming Black Widow movie, so I'm stoked for that. Her boyfriend is played by Jack Raynor, who is also very good. He played the older brother in Sing Street, which is another movie I highly recommend, but I don't know much else that he's done. Honestly, the scenes between the two of them are the standouts of this movie, and that's good because the conflict between them is the whole point of the movie. So, yeah. William Jackson Harper, who you most likely know as Chidi from The Good Place, he plays the researcher Josh, and he does a great job for what I believe is his first major film role. The other friend, Mark, who is a total bleep, is played to perfection by none other than Will Poulter. This is Will Poulter, aka Eustace Scrubs from Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Gally from The Maze Runner, the eyebrow guy. He's got those eyebrows. He's hilarious. Just a treat in this movie. And Pele, who's played by Swedish newcomer Wilhelm Blomgren, plays his part just as well. So they're all good. But aside from the acting, the cinematography in this movie is simply out of this world. If nothing else, you have to see this movie for the gorgeous camera work. There are many shots that I can just pick from memory because they're that iconic to the film. The cinematographer is a longtime collaborator of Ari Aster's, Pavel Pogorzelski, who also worked with him on Hereditary. The music is brilliant as well, and this includes the diegetic or the actual sound within the film. So you've got the recorded music, and then there are singers and instrument players within the film itself, and they provide a simultaneously beautiful and haunting atmosphere throughout the movie. In other words, I really, really love Ari Aster's Midsommar. So it is a strong recommendation from me. Again, proceed with caution. It is a long movie at about 2.5 hours, and don't expect it to be continuously energetic. If you're squeamish or uncomfortable with explicit sex scenes, I am a little bit. You have also been warned, and it is different. It is a unique movie. People have made comparisons to Robin Hardy's The Wicker Man, the original 1970s one, the British one, not the one with Nicolas Cage, um, which I saw that after seeing Midsommar. And although the plot lines may seem similar, the styles in which the stories are told, I think, are enough to differentiate them. That said, Midsommar is weird and it goes out there. But if you can really appreciate original storytelling, if you are a patient and thoughtful moviegoer, aware that it might not totally make sense to you at first, and if you can handle some extreme visuals, go. Go see Midsommar and tell me what you think. So now is the time that I have set aside to go into finer detail about the movie. So if you're not a fan of having major plot points spoiled for you, I would recommend coming back to this video after having seen Midsommar if you still want to be a part of the discussion. Ready? Okay. So guys, you've all seen Midsommar now, right? Let's break it down. Did you know I've seen this movie 6 times now. Did you know that the opening mural basically spoils the entire movie? Um, the music track that plays at the very beginning is titled Prophesy, which makes sense. You see 3 skeletons in the top left corner, and if I recall, they're tangled in hoses, that indicating the murder-suicide of Danny's sister and her parents. And then you also see a man walking behind a crying woman trying to comfort her. That's Danny and Christian. And then above them, there's a man in a tree sketching on a pad. That's Pele. And then a little to the right of all that, you see Pele playing a flute while Danny, Christian, Mark, and Josh follow behind him. Clearly a Pied Piper reference as Pele entices them all to their doom. And then you can see the 2 elders dressed as angels jumping from the cliff. And there's a maypole too, I believe. And there might be some other smaller details I can't recall. Okay, so the opening shots of a wintry forest. What does that mean? Does it just indicate the season of loss? Danny losing her sister and her parents? Maybe. And then Danny calls Christian, and man, that was a great delivery from Florence Pugh. She was so good in this. When she calls him back though, and all you hear are these visceral wails. If you've seen Hereditary, did that remind you of anyone? Man, Ari Aster, he can make women cry. And then the crying transforms into a sharp violin note, which also sounds like a siren. And if that isn't a perfect transition, I don't know what is. Oh my goodness, the music that plays over that next scene is fantastic. Okay, when I saw the camera zoom out the window into the falling snow with the music picking up in intensity, and then you get hit with this as the words A24 presents, as those words appear on screen, that's when I knew. That's when I knew this was an event movie, like Avengers or something. I was in for a treat, and it made me so happy. Um, dude, Dude, that guttural thing that Florence Pugh does with her voice when she cries, it's hypnotically awful, and I love it. Okay, then the scene with Danny and Christian after she learns he's going to Sweden felt so natural. And like, so Christian feels attacked and he just wants to remove himself from the situation so he doesn't make her any more upset, but she just wants to talk things over. And you can see how much she pulls on his arms, practically begging him to sit down with her. And then you see later in the movie, Pele just sits and asks her to sit with him. Like like neither of them hate each other, but it just feels like one of those situations where neither one of them are benefiting from being with the other. It's so well done. Okay, can someone explain to me though, what is Christian saying when he tells his friends that he invited Danny, but she's not actually invited? Like he invited her and she agreed to go, but she's not actually going. But then it's like she is coming and they all know she is. Like I still haven't figured out what was going on there. Was he easing them into it? I don't know, man. I still can't hear exactly what he said just before he let her in, so I need subtitles. But still, when when he first said he invited her and they just stared up at him, hilarious. That was hilarious. Okay, and Pele is just drawing the table. Was that important? I don't know. I mean, was it just establishing that he likes to draw? But it felt like there was particular focus on the table and that he wasn't comfortable sharing it. And I mean, was there particular significance in the fact that he liked to draw? I mean, it provided an opportunity for conflict later when he gave Danny the drawing for her birthday, whereas Christian forgot. But was there any meaning behind him being an artist beyond that, though? Someone let me know. Then, then I remember the scene as they're driving to the community when the camera goes upside down, and my first thought was, "Whoa, how'd they do that while driving or flying a drone or whatever?" Then it made me think, Ari, you did this same upside down thing in Hereditary. And now I'm thinking, is turning the camera upside down is that special? Isn't that just like a gimmick at this point? Because I remember Black Panther did the same thing to signify the upheaval and disorder occurring on screen. And then Hereditary did it because the main character is going through turmoil, I guess. And now in Midsommar, everything's starting to feel topsy turvy. Like, yeah, it's just a gimmick now, right? Any thoughts? Um, man, I'm only half an hour into the movie at this point, I think. But like I said, I could talk about this movie for hours. There's so many little things I could point out. Um, the conversation with Pele about the seasons of life, for instance, like every 18 years, there's a change in season until 72 at the end of winter when you get dead. But then guess what? 18 years after that is 90 years. And that festival happens every 90 years. Is that coincidence? Also, yeah, I should specify the Midsummer Festival takes place every year, hence a yearly May Queen. But the ceremony with the burning temple and the sacrifices, that's the 90 years. That's the thing that happens every 90 years. Um, then there's 9 sacrifices, like half of 18 or a tenth of 90. And how many months are women normally pregnant? 9. How many letters are in Midsummer? 9. Then there's the framing Ari Aster does with the Happy Birthday song, where there's a group of women singing to a newborn baby behind them, like how it contrasts the celebration of one's birth between the cultures. And what were those scissors? What were those scissors that they put under the baby's pillow? And did I miss something about ticks? Was there an overarching purpose for the tick discussion? But let's talk about Atastupan, the cliff jump scene, my favorite scene. The buildup is so carefully crafted. The dinner scene beforehand is so silent and reverent, but once you know what's coming, it's so full of tension. then watching as the elders are carried up solemnly, then their hands are sliced, and that's our first sign of blood, isn't it? Then the music builds as the woman raises her hands to the heavens with an absolutely gorgeous shot from above and below, and every shot in that scene is just perfect. And then she stares directly at Danny. What the heck? This got serious. Danny starts breathing heavily. The music cuts out. Silence. Danny watches and then gasps as her face gets torn off. The British couple is freaking out and like, that could have been enough. But Ari Aster, the madman, he brings out another. Like how genius is that? One horrible death could have been enough, but he doesn't even give you time to process that one because whoop, Christian points up like, oh man, you're kidding me. Round two, the British guy's yelling at him not to jump, and then he does, and it's shot from a distance, but you can still hear the impact, and come on. And are you kidding me? He's not dead. Like, surely that's enough, right? Nope. There goes the Mallet Brigade. They walk up to him, and you're just thinking, they're not going to. Yep. And they start taking turns. Dude, I tell you, I've seen a lot of movies and a lot of graphic material, but this scene is so good and so haunting. It's simply incredible. But isn't that crazy? This film is specifically made from an American lens where that sort of thing just seems absolutely inhumane. But there may be a culture out there that is perfectly okay with this because of how they view life. I mean, if I could point to one scene that perfectly encapsulates Midsommar, it's this, because it is specifically targeted towards Danny's fear of being alone, of losing someone she loves, but the elder tells her, and she looks directly at her when she says this, that it does no good to dwell on the tragedy of death. So the people of Horga joyfully give up their lives as a celebration of the life they've already lived and the anticipation of those who will follow behind them. And then the scene immediately afterward between Pele and Danny, where he tells her that he never had a chance to feel sorrow because he had a family that never stopped loving him and cherishing him, which directly points at the relationship she currently has with Christian, where she doesn't feel that way. And maybe she can find a family here in case Christian comes to some untimely demise by chance. Further questions I have: the Ruby Rather book disappearing. What was the plot significance of them announcing that? No one actually stole it, right? They just said that to weed out whether Christian was in cahoots with Josh or something. I still can't figure that one out. Um, then there was also a face that appeared when Danny's dancing around the maypole during the maypole scene. Everything gets all loopy and dizzy, and shots are superimposed over each other. There was a face there, and who was that? Um, Also, was that Mark's skin to face when Josh got attacked? I mean, I realized that could have been in relation to the Skin the Fool game that they mentioned earlier, but we see Mark's face at the end of the movie, so they just put it back. I don't know. And then that final scene where everyone's getting burned, some of them alive, and then that guy starts screaming, and all the villagers start screaming and writhing, and Danny watches first in horror, and then she starts to smile eerily, and then the happy credits music starts playing. Ari Aster likes putting happy music at the end of his twisted fever dreams he calls movies. But man, I love this movie. It's weird and grotesque and awful, but I love it. Apparently, there's going to be an extra half hour of footage on the DVD and Blu-ray versions, making a 3-hour cut. And let me tell you, a 3-hour horror movie is what I always wanted. Between this and Endgame, I wouldn't mind 3-hour movies becoming a more regular occurrence. So, those are my thoughts on Midsommar. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Some of you probably hated it, and I totally get that. So I suggest picking up a new Regal Unlimited subscription that they just rolled out, or the AMC one. if you prefer AMC, and go see Midsommar again, knowing what you know about it now. Seeing a movie more than once really helps you clarify your thoughts on it, so that's what I would recommend. Um, Parts I didn't like, I mentioned before, I'm a little iffy on explicit sex scenes, so that one was a little rough. I mean, I want to be able to like take my wife or my parents to a movie and not like have to, you know, explain ahead of time like, oh, by the way, there's something you should watch out for. Um, but that's just me. We're we're a bit prudish. If you know, if you're okay with that, that's fine. But yeah, we're a bit more conservative that way. And so if the move, I would have been okay if that they didn't show all that in the movie. Like they only just hinted at it. But other than that, like profanity, drug use. I mean, I see stuff like that in movies all the time. So I've become numb to it. Um, yeah, but other things I didn't like. I can't really point to anything. Just the questions I had. Like, what does that mean? Like, how does that fit in? Um, I don't know. Uh, yeah, but I really really like this movie. So thanks for listening to me ramble. Peace, but not literally.